Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, the 6th of June. We are now officially halfway through the year, which is frightening, isn't it? Just how fast the years go by. But I want to talk today about list building. This is, I think, regardless of how competent and great we are at all the other aspects of building our business, if we're not able to reach out to new people on a consistent basis and keep that funnel fluid, dynamic, energized, refreshed, renewed, and ongoing, then our business will soon dry up pretty fast, won't it? So I want to talk about this particular skill because I think this is really a foundational skill for us all to be constantly engaged in. And I want to give it context through two particular stories. When I moved to England, and these stories are designed, they kind of highlight two typical concerns that I've seen people come across when it comes to building their names list. The first was when I first moved to England in my early 20s, I joined a network marketing company and was very, very excited about the opportunities that lay ahead. And I remember I think I was maybe 22 or 23, so fairly young, new to the country. I didn't know a lot of people, but I was certainly enthusiastic about what lay ahead with this business that I was in. And anyway, I remember going to this meeting and they had one of the top distributors there. He was making £50,000 a month and they were kind of showing off his checks and he was doing wonderful things. And he pulled up back in those days when they had first introduced, those TV screens that go in the back of the headrest in your fancy car, right? And that was all the rage back then when it was just kind of happening. And I was like, man, this is awesome. This is exciting. And he was there to show us how to do it, what to do, and how to get going. And I was there anxiously ready to take notes, and I'm furiously taking notes down. And anyway, he talked about contacting 3 people a day, every day for a month. Just basically, he said, if you do that over a 30-day period, with the conversion rates and so on, you'll get about 3 solid people in your business, which is what you need. You want to do this for a few consecutive months and so on. And I remember going, that means within a couple of months, I'm at a standstill. I'm stuck. I don't know that many people. I'm not sure how many of you relate to that, maybe that moment of overwhelm or despair when it's like you need to contact this many people, and then you're going, I don't know if I can sustain that because that expires my list, right? And very quickly I kind of hit a brick wall going, how do I get past this? How did these guys get past this? What are they doing? I felt stuck. So that's kind of problem number one that I think people often face when it comes to building their names list is we run out of names or we work it once and then where do we go a second time? Right? Especially if we've been in the business for a while and we've gone through our names list, we've worked with all those people, kind of what next? And that kind of leads me to the next point. Fast forward a few years, and I'm hosting an event, a training meeting in the Netherlands, and it's with Nikan, and we're going to have you know how I do on a fairly regular basis, that activity where I used to call it a power hour, where we'd pick up the phone, we'll make as many contacts as possible and text, and we do that on a regular basis here on these calls, right? And I was going to do that activity with this group. And so I told everyone, when you come to this event, bring your contact lists, right? Because we're going to be using them. And anyway, this one gentleman came along with his contact list, and it was a big folder. It must have been about that big, right? And he didn't know why he was bringing his contact list to the event, right? He just knew I'd asked him to bring it. Maybe he thought I was asking them to show it off, right? Let's have a look at your contact list. How good is it? How does it look? How organized is it, right? And anyway, he comes out with the biggest contact list. It's almost like a phone book. And before the event has started, he's very proudly showing me this contact list, right? And look how great it is. Look at all these names, all these people that I know. And he's very, very proud of his contact list. Anyway, the activity comes around where it's like, okay, we're going to start reaching out and setting appointments. Pull out your contact list. Let's go find a quiet space where you're not going to get interruption and background noise. And for the next 30 minutes, you're going to contact as many people on that list as you can, right? And then we're going to come back. We'll report what our experience has been and so on. Anyway, I notice everyone nervously going to different parts of the room and different parts of the hotel and what have you to kind of start making these calls. And I notice he's kind of sticking around. He's not going anywhere. And not only is he not going anywhere, he's not doing anything. Right. So I go up to him and I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't you making calls? And he's like, well, very sheepishly, very uncomfortably, he then has to confess, well, I built this list about 11 years ago, right? And I don't know how current it is. I haven't spoken to most of these people on this list since then. It was a dead list, right? It was a dead list. So point number two is, of course, how do we keep it current and growing, right? So that's what I want to talk about today is that, one, we want to avoid those problems of having dead lists. And two, I want to avoid the problem of going, I don't know how to get past my first group of people, right? And reach out. Now, I know some of us have been in this business for a while. Maybe you've gone through your first group of people and you're stuck on getting through the next group or finding the next group or whatever number of times that may be, where we find ourselves stuck and not knowing where to go. So this is what I want to talk about today is how do we make that dynamic? How do we find all these different ways? Yeah, how many times have we heard that in order to, to get going, get started, you build your 100 names list? Yeah. Dave, you got a question or a comment?
I was going to answer your question.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. So one of the things I realized maybe a couple of months ago, I've said this, some of you heard it, that the skills I learned to build network marketing came from corporate America or life and living. And back in the 90s, when I was really building Nika, I did a training program. It wasn't called the Smart Networker, but I went around the country and around the world, actually. And I developed I guess it was a gimmick of sorts, but it was called the What Do You Do game. And it was a survey. And at the end of every training course, it was usually a Friday night or a Saturday night going into Sunday, the audience had to go do this What Do You Do game. Now, here was the interesting thing about the What Do You Do game. It was to find out how many different occupations you could find in an hour. And what it did was it caused people, they had a survey sheet and they had a question, and here's what it was. It says, I'm doing a training program to learn how to be a better communicator, and we have this contest, and it's to find out as many different occupations as we can in an hour, and then would you help me? Now, the interesting thing about this was two things. One was the button of help, because that's what we're looking for, is people that like to help. And when people like to help, they would engage. Now, the second part of it was that you'd you'd have your survey form and you'd say, in order for this to count, you need to fill out my form. And the form was name, occupation, phone number, signature.
Yeah.
And so the drill was that, and this is in the Smart Networker, so you can get it, it's very easy, but the drill was you'd ask the question. If they said yes, then you'd hand them the clipboard, the form, and the pen, and shut up.
Yeah.
Now, what happened here was absolutely remarkable, because the people that did this in earnest found distributors, customers, and built their business, because they ended up doing what we need to do, which is end up in a conversation to provide information to solve problems, challenges of life and living. And what the challenge that I discovered or have come across in the last 8 years with regard to this is the inability to communicate the information so that the person at the other end understands what you're saying and can then think about it, process it, and then apply it if it fits, if the shoe fits, kind of a concept. So here was the brilliance. In the next exercise of the Smart Networker, I have the water survey. Now, we tested this, And if you want customers and distributors, then you do the water survey, because you'll get them all day long, all day long. So you don't have to worry about your lists if you've run out. And I ran out. See, I ran out of my list years ago. And so when we did the new, the new Powerhouse program, when we created that in January, it was like, well, okay, I want to be the first one to do it. Ego came out.
Yeah.
And I said, well, then I got to go sponsor somebody. And again, knowledge, experience. I threw an ad in a common place that I had contacts with, and I got the response, and I followed through. We got the job done, and last month she just broke 3 silvers. So this was a remarkable. But it came from nothing. But it was all based on the same concept of going out and asking, getting data, getting into that conversation, and moving forward. And again, sometimes I didn't go after my warm market. I went all cold market.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing. So anyway, that's how I did what I did. And there's a couple of projects for you.
There's some great nuggets there, Dave. Thank you. It's one of the things I think that really stands out there is certainly asking questions and asking for help. You get a really positive response because people love to help, right? And to your point in inquiry, and kind of building that connection, offering value. I've often heard it said, people will find you interesting if you are interested. As we strive to be interested in others, of course, that's going to certainly help in building that relationship.
Now, just one more point. Where I got this from was the movie industry. And I worked for a company in Hollywood, and it was major studios, that every time they did a movie, they'd survey and ask people to go watch their movie and then comment on the ending. And if they didn't like the ending, then they'd reshoot it and set up a new ending. So here's what it was. It's like most people have a hard time getting out of and going and talking to somebody, because they're not sure what that person's going to do or how they're going to react or what they're going to say. Are they going to feel intimidated? Are they going to put me down? Are they going to be negative? Are they going to all of that stuff? So this is a VIA, to use something else to communicate.
Yeah.
And it becomes a very effective tool that anybody can do. We're doing it like crazy and having a ball with it. And when I put the students that tested the program through it, they at first were a little intimidated, but the success was, once people who resonated with what I were talking about started talking, it was piece cake.
Yeah.
So it's you get to find the right people, and that's what we talk about constantly. You talk about, and anyway, it's an interesting concept. Takes away that fear.
And that's great, and that really leads nicely into what I wanted to touch on now, because I was at a meeting a couple of years back. It was a network marketing kind of training course that I was participating in, and the lady that was presenting this particular segment just gave me a huge aha moment. I talked before about having your 100 names list, kind of building that list out, right? And she said, that will only get you so far. She says, I want to look at building your list slightly differently. Rather than putting down 100 names, I want you to put down 100 different ways that you can contact people and find people, right? So, and Dave's just highlighted a great way in terms of surveys and reaching out that way, and doing that in a way that reduces or minimizes the fear factor that comes with contacting, because this, for many people, is an activity where there is some of the greatest fear, right? Once someone's in and they're up and going, we don't have that same fear factor in reaching out and following up on what they've done that week and kind of partnering with them and doing ABCs. The fear factor is reduced there. The fear factor, I think, is most intense in that reach out and contacting of new people, doing those phone calls, establishing those new rapports, that new relationships, and what have you. But she said that to me was really interesting. She said, rather than write down 100 names, I want you to write down 100 ways, right, to contact people, to find people and add them to your list, right? I'll give you an example, okay? I made a note of some, I'm not going to read out 100 different ways now, because that would be exhaustive and mind-numbing in the process. But I'll give you an example of how I've done it, right? So first of all, I'm gonna make, and you might want to make a note of this. I'm going to identify some questions that I ask first of myself to help me and to help the creative process of thinking of 100 different ways, right? And then I'll give you examples of what these different ways look like. Okay, so first of all, yeah, who is it that I'm wanting to reach? And I'm going to ask you to be specific there, right? Because if we have the old school approach of throw enough mud at the wall and eventually enough will stick, that's not a long-term strategy, right? And that's certainly not something that you can teach with any degree of sustained motivation with your team, right? So you want to get specific, right? Who specifically am I wanting to reach? What kind of person am I looking for? Okay. And by the way, you will find, to Dave's earlier point, when he gave an example of all these different professions, you're not necessarily looking for one particular profession as the most effective example to connect with, right? But you're looking for a profile of personality. Someone that is hungry, someone that is committed to finding a way to do something better with their lives in terms of taking ownership of their financial responsibilities, closing the gap where some of their pain points are, where Ni can provide solutions and so on. But you got to look for that hunger more than anything. I think that hunger is one of the key definitions of what we're looking for. Okay, where do they hang out? That's the next question. Where do they spend their time? And these questions will make more sense when I give you the examples that I'm going to share. Who do they hang out with? Because this is an important question, because sometimes it's the law of, what is it, like 3 degrees of separation, right? I might not know the particular person, but I might know someone that does, right? So who do they spend their time with? Who do they hang out with? Who knows them? How can I get to know them? If I'm learning where they hang out, if I'm learning how they spend their time and who they associate with, then how can I infiltrate that circle and get involved, right? How can I participate? And with that comes the last critical question. What do I offer or bring to the table that makes my presence valuable? Okay, that's a really important point in building the connections. What you're seeing here is you're looking for, as I reach out to connect with new people and find new ways to connect with people, what am I offering? Who am I looking for? And what value do I add? Right. So part of that you do see starts to give you some of your responses so that when they do respond and express interest, you've got something prepared, at least emotionally, cognitively, in terms of what I'm going to say next when they express interest. So this is what I've done. I've given a couple of examples of online, offline environments where we can find different ways to connect with people. The commitment or goal here is to develop a skill that enables us to keep adding people to our lists continually, so that we don't end up like me when I was 23 going, okay, in 2 months' time, my list is finished and I'm not finished building my business, so I'm stuck. We want to remove that feeling of getting stuck, or to that other gentleman's example, having dead lists where we've got plenty of names from when we did the work years ago, but it's redundant because it's an old list. This is something that we need to have dynamic, fresh, and with us all the time. I remember when I was at, when I used to work for Melaleuca, and the CEO there, Frank Vandersloot, awesome guy. I remember him saying, there are only 2 times in your life where you should not have your contact list with you. When you're in the shower or when you're swimming, right? Aside from that, you should always have your contact list on you everywhere you go. If you don't, it's like saying my shop is shut, right? We always have a spare moment. I used to find when I do school runs, I don't need to do school runs here because of where we live, but when I do school runs, especially in England, you'd have to park to get a good spot close to the school. It's always raining and miserable weather there, of course. So you want to get as close to the door as possible to get your kids. That means that you got to get there a little bit early ahead of all the other parents. And you sit there and you're waiting for 15 minutes, right, before the kids break for school. That was a great time to pull out my list, pull out my phone, make a couple of connections and start reaching out to people, do some follow-up and what have you. It's often in those few minutes, if we're prepared, that we can make our list really count. So let's jump into these different ways. I'm going to start with social media as an example. Okay. So if we were to write down on our list of different ways to connect with people and keep our list building activity current and fresh and new people being added, right? One might go social media. right? Well, that's not really all that specific. That's a very broad brush approach. So you might have that as a header, and then I'm going to break it out and have a subheader underneath that. And underneath that, I'm going to have Facebook as an example. And then underneath that, I've got a different group, a different subheader again, a different list again. And there is where I start to build and get specific in different ways. I'll put down here Facebook groups, and then I can branch out again. For example, I can have my own Facebook group, or I can be a member of other Facebook groups. And that means I start to target specifically what kind of Facebook groups do I want to be a part of. Oh, you're a bit wet. Okay, show mummy. Show mummy. Okay, I've got a little interruption here. Okay, go ask mummy. Go ask mummy. Good girl. So what kind of Facebook groups do I want to be a part of if I'm not building my own, or in addition to building my own? Maybe it's ones that talk about entrepreneurship. Maybe it's ones that talk about health and wellness, active lifestyles. Maybe that personality type that you're looking for is going to have their own group. There are so many hundreds and thousands of different groups out there where you can participate. And of course, it's not just following groups. The critical thing here is engaging in the conversations, right? So participate. And I found that to be quite an effective way, where you engage and you participate, you share a positive thought, something valuable in a conversation, and very soon it can become an offline conversation where you move it to a private conversation with a particular person in the group. Next thing you know, you've got a one-on-one dialogue, you're building relationships. Next thing you know, you're on the phone with them, you're talking to them, and it can change from there, right? So Facebook groups is a great way, hosting your own and having a host of different ones that you follow and participate in as a way of building relationships, showing value, giving value, and then moving the conversation offline onto Facebook Messenger or onto the phone or what have you. Facebook ads, another great way. Again, you can tailor and make that specific as you wish. Your own Facebook groups, I mentioned collaborations. This is certainly a common trend in social media platforms, the opportunity to collaborate with others that are not competitive. You can't do this with other network marketing companies or distributors, for example, because you've got the same objective and you're wanting the same outcome. But you can, for example, if you're with groups that are talking about entrepreneurship and you've got an associated interest, do collaborations where you can support each other, do a blog that promotes them and their audience, do a giveaway that they can share to their audience, but it's connected to you. And that way, all of a sudden, their audience is talking about our product or our opportunity or what have you, and their audience becomes your audience. That can be very effective too. So that's an example of Facebook. Instagram, you can go out again, audience building, content creation. That is a very big task, a very time-consuming task. It's a long one, but it's a way. And like I said, we're just writing down all these different ways. Again, ads, collaborations, and what have you. LinkedIn, a different approach in LinkedIn to these other ones. You can do direct invitations, free content, engaging in other people's posts, some similar activities, but it's certainly a different style, message, audience, and approach on these different platforms. So you can see how I break it out. It's not just social media is a way. I break it down to different platforms and different strategies. The objective here in writing out the 100 different ways list, is not necessarily to go through 100 different ways. It's a real creative exercise that gets your mind open, gets you thinking and exploring all the different ways that you could reach out and connect to others. And then from there, you find your favorites, the ones where you bring the most to the table, where you're the most confident, where you've got the most experience or skill. You start there and then you can build out. But the thing is, that's going to give you a constant kind of chain of opportunities that is really important for us to keep working and mining. Barbara Bertucci.
Hey, there's a couple of habits that I created over time, and one of them, and I'm drawing a blank on who I got it from, but I'll think of it in a moment. But it was Monday morning, I call it the Cadillac salesman, and I would just call a customer that loved the products. And no reason, no rhyme, no intention, just saying hello. One, it sets your phone, and it just feels good.
Yeah.
Then over time, if there is, like we have the KBB special and things like that, they might want to know about it. The other thing is, some of my upline have been brilliant at it, is asking for referrals.
Yeah.
So you do the Cadillac thing. I call it the Cadillac salesman thing, where you just are appreciative and checking base and touching base and seeing how they're doing with their family and connecting, but creating that warm market. But the referral ask,
Yeah.
and don't forget about that, because it's like-minded people. And again, that help word, Dave, is really brilliant, because I'm working on a thing, I'm working on a campaign, I'm working
Yeah.
on, you make up the game,
Mm.
and I'm connecting with 10 people this week, and I just really need your help on who do you know that might be like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really a great way to do it. I did find, and I think that the survey will get you some home in on some people, but I do think that cold market, you have to go through like about 100 names, where in warm market you're probably going to go through the 21, right?
Yeah.
The 21 names or presentations to get the 7, to get the 3.
Yeah.
Like that. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to underline the referral thing and not bypass that.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you shared that, Barbara, because that to me is something that, regardless of the approach that we've taken in terms of finding people, where that relationship has come from, how it's been nurtured, referrals should always be a part of our conversation, right?
And you can plant the seed in your presentation. And planting the seed is, we're going to go through some of these demonstrations and things, and you're going to learn some things and experience some things. But along the way, you might think of some people that could use this.
Yeah.
And that's where I would do exactly the same thing with them. And then that's my little mini commercial. And then I just go right back into demonstrating.
Yeah.
So
yeah, excellent. Yeah. Really good. Really good. Dave.
A long time ago, I read a book called The Greatest Car Salesman in the World by a gentleman by the name of Joe Girard. 3,500 cars a month himself.
Oh my gosh.
And
it's got to be a
now
world
he
record.
was a master. Huh?
That's got to be a world record or something.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. But the message was what was important. And the whole key to prospecting, which is what you're talking about, is making yourself known, is creating your identity, who you are, what you represent, what you do, and then continuously adding a PR campaign factor of promoting that identity to the world on a constant basis. And so if you're the water person, or you're the vitamin girl, or you're the sleep guy, or whatever you are, then that's your identity. And I remember, just if I go back in time, my identity in Nikon was the money guy, because all I talked about was making money. I didn't talk about buying the product. I didn't tell about selling the product. I just talked about making money. So that's my reputation. And we worked like magic. So you might want to find this guy's book, because it was brilliant in his campaigns of how he continuously just went back to the same people over and over. The Cadillac story, Barbara, that's exactly what it was. And it's just a constant promote. You got to find out what's needed, make yourself known, find out what's needed and wanted, and then produce that. And that's the name of the game. Anyway, I thought you might enjoy that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll definitely check that book out, because that sounds really good. So there's been some great nuggets, I think, that have been shared here today. Quick summary of what we've talked about, and then the call to action, the invitation. As we build our lists, if we wanted to have a great, thriving, growing business in Nikan, we need to stay on top of keeping our contact list dynamic and current. And in order to do that, one way to approach it is to not just write down 100 names, but 100 different ways of finding people that we can connect with. We've seen how we can break it down and subcategorize it. We can do it online, offline. It's building rapport. It's knowing who our target audience is. It's doing things like surveys. It's doing things like reaching out to the Cadillac guy. getting the quick wins, building the relationships. I love what Barbara said before about nurturing relationships, because she's right. You will get the greatest success from your warm market, right? But the cold market, you want to convert to warm. And that's a filtering process. And that takes time, and that takes patience, and it takes that nurturing and that engagement and contact with people, like Barbara was saying. And again, critically, I think, we want to make sure that we're always using referrals. Who do you know, as we've talked today, who do you know that would have similar feelings to yourself that would be open to learning more about this? Dave, last thought.
Yeah, last thought. In the program that I put together, you have to have a twin or a partner to do the exercises.
Yeah.
So my suggestion on this topic, which you brought up was so brilliantly, is that get together with another person and practice communicating to that person based on the idea of the list.
Yeah.
Because it's getting the fumble out of your voice, getting the fumble out of your words, getting the fumble out of your, mental capacity to go do the work. And hello.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a Daffy Duck approach. But if you create a twin and then practice with each other, call each other up, hey, it's remarkable what results you'll get. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Let's finish on that, because that I think is a great second call to action here. Is, in building this list, right? We want to be able to reach out and connect on a consistent basis. We want to be doing the referrals and asking people who they know. That always keeps the list dynamic, just by having that skill alone. But to get really good at it, team up, have a partner. One of the great side benefits of practicing with each other, where that takes the nervousness out, takes the edge out, gives you a bit of confidence, helps you have that assurance that, okay, I know what I'm doing now. Amongst all of those benefits, the other benefit is you're going to do more. If you're doing it by yourself, you won't do as much. If you get a twin, if you partner up with someone and you practice with each other, instinctively, whether you're wanting to have that as an accountability partner or not, instinctively, the side benefit of that is going to be, hey, I just got to tell you, I just had this great call. I'm so glad I practiced with you the other day, because this is how it went. You're going to want to share your outcomes, right? And that's going to breed ongoing activity and accountability. And it's going to give you a chance to have not just a twin to help you practice, but someone cheering you on the sidelines, excited for your success when you get the results coming in. And we all need that, right? So partner up, practice, build the 100 different ways. Start with a handful to get going. Keep it dynamic, ask for referrals, and practice. And then as you do that, all the other things in the business will flow from there. But it all does really begin with this fundamental activity. So let's do that. I ask you to bring your pads and pens today. Let's set a goal to do something with this today, not later on in the week. Let's do it today. Find your partner, team up with someone, add a few ways to that list, get that going, and let's have some fun. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.